Name is Andisiwe, surname Rwexana. I work at Peresec Derivatives, which is a derivatives broker registered with the JSE. I work as a compliance officer, and I've been working at Peresec for, 4 years now. Any entity, or any business rather, has a set of laws that they need to abide by. So a compliance officer makes sure that they abide by the law. Originally from Cape Town, as I've already mentioned. So after schooling, after matric, went to UCT, and I just wanted to do something that's going to make me money, you know. We need to move from the township to the burbs, you know. So I went for a BCom in accounting, you know, just one major accounting. And I think by the second year of accounting, I'd figured out that, yeah, this is not going to work out for me. Not only because of the material, but because I didn't really enjoy much of it. You know, by then we'd started shadowing auditors and so on. I was like, if this is what they do, no. So I picked up law, because I always wanted at the back of my mind to study law. So I picked up law as a major, so I continued to become accounting and law, graduated, and then thought, okay, so what am I going to do with this? So by the time, I think it was my final year in varsity, I found out about compliance and risk management. I thought, that's where I'm going to go. You know, compliance is something I want to do. Tell them what to do. Make sure they do it. So I thought, definitely compliance. So I started off at First Rand Bank as it was a learnership, a risk management learnership. It was a contract for, I think it was 18 months. So after that, I got a job with F&B, then F&B Africa, as a compliance officer. So started off there reporting to the head of compliance at the time. Started off with my compliance role there and been stuck with it since. From F&B to Bank of Athens to Nedbank, which was my move from Joburg to Cape Town, because by then I'd already relocated to Joburg, moved back home with Nedbank. From Nedbank, went on to insurance, whole new world of compliance. That was great, just a 4-year stint with insurance. If you're in compliance, insurance is where you should go, basically. The role is much faster than what it is in banking, in now derivatives trading. So left insurance onto derivatives trading because we need to, you know, learn, move on to new stuff. Moved on to JSE trading, and that's it. I've been now for 4 years. What you do from the law, you draw up what we call a monitoring plan. So you pull out things or pull out rules that the company has to abide by, things that they need to do. So in a week, you'd monitor those line items. So a week is looking at surveillance, going through any new legislation, making sure we're up to date, making sure we're complied. It's attending compliance forums, compliance committees, risk committees. It is attending, we have a weekly exco, there's the word. So attending weekly excos, making sure everybody else is up to date as well. So yeah, that's like a typical week for a compliance officer. Asset management particularly is only starting to grow now. So it's a fairly small industry compared to a banking sector or an insurance sector. So it's only starting to grow now. So as I said, the insurance and the banking sector has fairly matured in regulations and abiding by regulations. But the asset management space is new, right? So as any small business does, they do their compliance themselves. They make sure they get, you know, registered with the CIPC. They make sure they've got these things, you know, on lockdown until a regulator comes, you know, to regulate their space and say, okay, if you have X amount of staff, you need a compliance officer or somebody who's going to take on the role. So the compliance role is fairly new to the asset management space. So there is plenty of opportunities. The barriers, I think, would be, call it the old mindset, you know, where these entities are used to doing these things themselves. They you know, according to them, they know what to do. They know how to monitor, how to manage. So it's tough when the role of a compliance officer is being forced onto them by, say, legislation or by a regulator, which is basically what happened in the case of Peresec. So it's not easy, it's not easy to enter. And once you enter, it's even then tougher to make those moves within the business, But we're slowly getting there. There's plenty of opportunities. Sure, there are barriers, but those barriers are slowly coming down. It'll probably be dealing with the same, call it entity, but different angles. So I think I enjoy most dealing with regulators. I enjoy most standing up for the business that I work for and saying, no, we actually do this, we do it this way, and having to, loosely educate them on how the actual business works, because the regulator is the standpoint. They don't really know the operations of the business. They just know you guys need to do X, Y, Z, and we need to tell them this is how we do it. So sort of convincing them that we comply, we're 100% on par is great. And getting that star review, the star at the end of the review is amazing, because everybody else, I think that's when the business really gets to value your input. On a day-to-day, you're there, they don't really get it. It's when the regulator comes and it's between a fine or not a fine, So I enjoy that. And in the same vein, the worst is dealing with those very same regulators when they do not understand the nature of the business. All they have is, a set of statutes, and they don't get that operationally this is what it means, and having the very same conversation with them but struggling because now they're sitting when they're not approaching it as call it a learning curve, and they want to approach it as this is how it must happen, because they're not really in tune with the business operations. So yeah, it can be the worst to deal with, but at the same time, it's the greatest. Pressure goes both ways. Always important to learn. Always important to push yourself a little bit further. And as much as you get that in a profession, it's always better when you do it on a personal level for yourself, via education. It's the best empowerment anybody can get for themselves outside of having a compliance officer title or, whatever role there is out there. When you have a BCom, under your belt, when you have an honors under your belt, you're proving to, possible employers or possible takers of your service that you know what you're doing. You're proving your worth with that little piece of paper. You're saying, yes, I do know. So post BCom, I did an honors in financial planning at the University of Stellenbosch, and that for me was a learning curve. Remember, then I was in the insurance industry, so it was a matter of properly understanding where I am, because financial planning is what the insurance industry does primarily. So I took a PG dip in financial planning at Stellenbosch University. It was a great learning curve. I got to understand the business better as well. I got to apply my knowledge better, And post that, I did a compliance certificate with KISA, the Compliance Institute of SA, and it was done through UCT, but it was done by KISA. Post that, what did I do? Having to keep up with myself. What did I do? I did a few, but what I'm doing right now is a master's in development finance. So crazy as it may be, I sometimes look at myself in the mirror and I ask myself, are you sure you're okay? I'm doing a master's. So 2 children and a husband later, I am doing a master's in development finance. And I can't tell you, as scary as it is as thrilling and as rewarding as it is, coming into a lecture theatre and feeling that challenge that you felt the very first day you walked in from matric is amazing, because you're pushing yourself to the next level. You're empowering yourself outside of anybody else to the next level. You have it within your own hands. It takes a lot of perseverance, A, and B, I'd say knowing yourself, for lack of a better term, knowing exactly what it is you do know, having confidence in what you know, confidence in what you do, and being able to stand up straight, you know what I mean? So that's a skill that I can't really articulate. I can't say what that is, but perseverance is what I can think of, and knowing which you stand for and not backing down. And it takes, a pinch of kindness. You need to have those conversational persuasion, and have patience for it. Understand your role, but don't be swayed by the resistance. As one instance, I think in compliance, because you're exposed to the nitty-gritties, the real inner bits of the business you have to be in order to do your job. You're call it open to sensitive information that many in the business will not be open to. So it is really tough knowing. And so when you go out in the field, more specifically for like banking or for insurance, where they have branches, asset management, not so much. It's it's very small for now. It's not a matter of having branches. But the most interesting experience is going out into the branches and hearing the level of complaints that the people in the branches have about head office and what head office is doing, because they don't understand your role as compliance. They think you're there to fix everything. So getting all the complaints and then sure you can brush them off. But the most interesting one was where one staff member was call it being harassed, if I can put it that way, by an executive. It was so tough because harassment is regulated, so you need to report on it. But because it was so sensitive, it was so tough. And it was in the insurance space, the way it ended up, and I tried my best. I am so proud of that report. I feel like I did good with reporting it to Exco. And I tried to, make it as diplomatic as possible, as academic as possible, because that's what you're there for. As much as you're yourself, you spend time with the people in the branches, and you become emotionally attached, and it's a shock and horror for you too, The Andisiwe is like, woo, but the compliance office is like, okay, this is what we need to do. But in the end, it didn't. That's why I said interesting, but not necessarily proud of. It didn't work out the way it was supposed to. The way the law is written in black and white form, it didn't work out that way because, money equals power. So the small guy, the guy who is the victim, got the bad end of the stick or the short end of the stick. So it didn't work out. So I'm not particularly proud of it, but that was the most interesting case that I've ever had to deal with. Having to sit in disciplinary hearings as witness, having to sit in court arbitration, having to see this to the end because you were the one who blew the whistle on it. It's not stuff you imagine when you walk into a professional compliance officer role with your suit on and your makeup on. You don't imagine it would get to that point. So that was an interesting case. You need to be able to separate the profession from the human being, the personal feelings. You need to be able to draw a line between, okay, I am here for you as your compliance officer and not as your friend. Or, let me give you a hug. That sounds so terrible. You need to be able to draw that line so that you can come across as impartial as what you are. Because the minute it's not impartial, then you're not taking your role as the compliance officer. You're not taking the cold, hard legislation and saying, this is what you're supposed to do. Then you're involving your emotions into it. And the position is as call it fault or negative in a business space as is already, that they will look for any loophole, to discredit you, or discredit the work that you do, discredit the law. They'll look for anything to not comply, Funny business is just wired like that. It could be the cheapest thing to comply, but they will go the most expensive route to not comply. It's instinct. So I think the one biggest trait you need to have is be able to separate, be a professional, be able to separate yours, where you start and where you stop, and where your profession starts and stops. It's very important. And also, I think as a compliance officer, it's very important to actually know the law that you're dealing with. So if you're going to be in an asset management space, empower yourself with what the law says. Read up in your spare time. Know exactly, so that when situations come up, you know where to go, you know which section of which act or where you're going to go, and not think twice and have to go Google and have to. You need to empower yourself with the knowledge that you're supposed to have as a compliance officer. So there's the one aspect of it. Yeah. I'd say know your space. Know your space. Be sensitive to the individuals, because it's not just business that we're dealing with. It's not just professionals that we're dealing with. We're dealing with a father. We're dealing with, call it a man who actually abuses his wife. So he looks at you. You're no different. You're smaller. You're younger. There's no, respect. You need to know. Your business, know your people, and control, or rather manage it wisely, I'd say to any young professional, make an informed decision. Make sure you gather all the information that you need. Know where you want to be, know your endpoint. So if you say, I want to be, earning 2 million at 30, know how possible that is within the environment that you're in. Look up how many 30-year-olds are earning 2 million and what it is they're doing, what it is that they've studied, or what would a person need to study if they hadn't studied, and so on. So do proper research and invest in your future in an informed way. Sure, passion is a lot. Passion is all that it's bagged out to be, but we're not all, fortunate enough to follow our passion and make a proper living of it. So I think make up your mind. What do you want? Do you want passion and be content, or do you want riches? And then make an informed decision. What is out there? What can you do? What can't you do? Job shadowing, I found, helped me a lot when I was in varsity and trying to shape where I'm going to go, what I'm going to do next. I could have easily completed the degree at GCT as accounting and then find out on day 1 or day 3 of the job that I do not want to be an auditor. So I think job shadowing really helped. You get a real feel of what it is you want to do, where it is you want to go. So I'd say do your homework, set that goal for yourself, do your homework, and make an informed decision about where you want to go. Sure, I'll tell you this, it looks very different pre-COVID than post-COVID. Tell you that. So a little bit, touch wood, as horrible as COVID was, we are grateful a little bit, that it created a space where we can work from home, where business got to see and believe that, it can work. You don't have to be in the office. You don't have to be there from 8 till 6 every day in order to prove that you're doing your job, you're getting your money's worth. So I think now, post-COVID, the balance looks much better. The work mom balance looks far better than what it did. So I used to work typically from 8:30 till about 6 every day. And sure, you're busy the whole day, but it's also a matter of presence, showing up, being there. Even though there are days when you'd leave at 5 when it's not that busy, but there are days when it'd be not that busy and you'd still leave at 6 because you need to be present, because you still need to prove that I am worthy, I do add value, So it used to be tough, and I'd had a full-time nanny and so on, but now it looks a bit different. Now I work from home. I come into the office once a week, and again, touch wood, we hope it actually stays that way. But even if not, I think I'm fortunate enough to be here in my profession, fortunate enough to be able to have these open conversations, with management, with, direct lines and so on. this works, this doesn't work. And because it's this age, you're dealing with other parents and other who understand exactly what it is you mean when you say, I have to be at that hockey match. My daughter is going to kill me if I'm not at that hockey match. So they get it. So it looks a bit different later on in your career or in any profession. But in those first years, you need to put in the hours because you need to prove to the industry, whatever industry you may be in, that you're worthy. You know what you're doing. And as far as interviews go, right, it is tough. It's not easy. But I think if you go in with the attitude, which is the attitude I've always had, their mistake is interviewing me. If they interview me, that's my job. I'm in there. That's it. Go in with that kind of confidence that they get to talk to me, then they get to know me, which means I get the position. That's that. So I'd say, to answer your first question, what would the panel say? I think I've heard, over many interviews that you're so outspoken. It's the one thing that I'd hear. So outspoken, and you articulate really well. You know what you're doing. You know what you're. So it's not just the qualification. In an interview, you're able to answer questions. You're so articulate. You're so outspoken. Gee, how was that experience there? And always have. Because they always remember stories, and from an interview, I still have people ask me, so, sure, what about that manager of yours from Nedbank? So always have stories and always speak to the interviewers as if you're speaking to any professional, answer the questions as if you're speaking to anybody else, in that same respectful manner. At the point I must have missed, and what they should always remember, as an interviewee, is always look for somebody who's been in the position that you want to get to. So call it the most golden information I've recently got was from somebody who's been in the compliance profession for 25 years, a good friend of mine who's 68. She recently said to me, because I told her, listen, I want to pivot. I want to move. I think I have done all there is to do in compliance. I've moved across the industries, and I don't know, it feels like there's nothing more. And she said to me, well, look, you can pivot, but don't throw away what you've already got. You've worked very hard to get to where you are. You've worked very hard to get the experience that you have. And there's not a lot of yous going around. There's not a lot of people who can say they have the same amount of experience and knowledge that you've attained over the years. So she said, pivot, just don't throw it away. Says you could always lean on it. You can always use it in a different form than being employed in call it a 9-to-5 job, So I took that and I was like, it's actually opened up a new window for me. So it's golden, having those people who've walked the path before. So when she said that, I took it. So if I'd pivot, I would definitely not lose the experience that I've attained over so many years. I would definitely still provide the very same service because I do love it. I am passionate about it, about, informing or educating or taking a new business around the curve with me and saying, okay, this is what you need to do, or let me help you here, and this is how you should be doing it. Yeah, that one's going to cost you a little bit more, and it's not very necessary. And liaising with regulators, as butch and as bossy as they are, I do enjoy it. So I wouldn't take that away at all. So I'd pivot into a role, as I said, that's going to be more impactful. I don't know what that looks like yet. I don't know the touch or the feel of it, but a role that would create proper impact, just like this interview that we're doing, that's going to have one person listen to it, and thousands may listen to it, but one person will have something to take from it, and whether it changes their lives or not, it's something they'll carry with them. So a role that's similar to that, or something that's similar, whatever role I've pivoted, something that's similar, in some way that's going to create an impact, whether small or no matter how small, in somebody's life, without throwing away compliance. So basically, I'd consult with compliance. So I'd still give my compliance services on a consultation and warp into whatever that looks like, the impactful role looks like. It felt like I'm looking at them right in the face. Don't give up. Number one, don't give up. And you are way more valuable than that piece of paper. If it's a degree, or you're way more valuable than your qualification. Try your best to think outside the box. Okay, so employment is not working right now. It's not coming together. I'm not getting a role. I'm not going to give up the pursuit. I'm still going to chase this profession, but what else can I do? In this new environment where there's plenty of opportunities, and more so for younger generations than for us. What else is there out there? What can I do? How can I provide the very same service that I'm applying for a post for, outside of a 9 to 5? As I've said, with compliance, I can easily not consult. So somebody else can think, okay, if I'm in asset management, if I'm a call it a portfolio manager, how can I, manage portfolios, or how can I advise on trading strategies and so on, without necessarily sitting at an Aeon desk from, 8 to 5? How can I do it? Well, how do I get myself out there without necessarily quitting on the journey to become that employee? So most importantly, don't give up. And there are way more opportunities than what you can see. Take a step back a little bit and see the value in yourself, and not in that CV or in that resume or in that interview that I botched up yesterday, or whatever the case is. There is way more value in me than just that. How do I get it out there?